So just a few points there. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Next, we'll hear from Chris Tuppen, and Chris is the Chief Sustainability Officer of the BT Group. Chris?
Thanks, John. BT's British Telecom. Transformation of energy is split into two parts. Transformation of generation and transformation of how energy is used, energy efficiency. In a lot of climate change meetings, it seems to me the generation side is the key focus of a lot of the discussion. And I think we are going to see transformation happen here. We're already seeing it in renewables. Carbon capture has a great future, and even fusion might still come along and provide benefit with nuclear power. I'd like to focus more on transformation of energy consumption, which after all has got to provide 50% of the carbon reduction in the energy area. The best technology here, I think, will be smart and hidden. It will deliver to people same or better experiences than old technology, but at significantly less energy consumption. I'm sure we all remember when energy efficient light bulbs came in. They took forever to warm up, and they never seemed to give as much light out as a traditional incandescent light bulb. And we all made apologies to people when we switched them on. Today, these energy efficient light bulbs are as good as any other light bulb. We got to transform in many ways in that kind of way. If we look at electricity grids today, with the increased amount of renewables that are coming on the grids, it's critical to balance the load with the supply. And that means smart control of demand. So in some buildings already, electricity companies are switching off air conditioning in order to balance out the load. In the smartest buildings, when there's surplus electricity, they freeze ice, and then when they need to come off the grid, they use that ice to keep the building cold so that people in the buildings have the same quality of experience but at reduced energy consumption. The key challenge here is making all this sufficiently attractive for people to invest. And when it comes to energy efficiency, as we heard from Nestlé this morning, the sort of costs of carbon that are critical in carbon-intensive industries are insufficient to encourage many businesses and householders to invest in energy efficiency. So this is where we need other mechanisms and policy intervention that create the necessary market stimulus. If you look at what happens with feed-in tariffs and renewable energy, we want that kind of stimulus somehow to happen in energy efficiency. One of the biggest transformations, and I'll close with this, is smart cities. 40% of all emissions are related to buildings, 20% of a city's emissions come from transport. Smart cities in the future will have distributed renewable energy, will have demand-side management through smart grids, buildings that think for themselves, homes, offices, hotels, shops, hospitals, schools, intelligent transport infrastructure, large fleets of electric vehicles, efficient waste recovery. The list goes on and on. All this is much easier to do when you're building a city from scratch, like Mazda in the Gulf. But retrofitting to an existing city, such as Mexico City, is much, much more difficult. It's unlikely to start with the consumer. It's much more likely to start with partnerships between the city council and private business. First of all, gathering data through sensors, using that data to help set targets and help create the right kind of decision-making processes. Initially around large buildings, large businesses, the transport infrastructure, and through that way get to the individual citizen. Through this way, these routes, we need to find ways of incentivizing people to invest in this. Models of finance that receive revenue, for example, from the energy savings, and that will help reduce the need for individuals to invest, but also give good returns on investment. So in conclusion, there are real transformational opportunities. They will mostly be delivered through the market economy, but we often need policy-related push to get those things going in the first place.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Helio Matar, the president of Akatu Institute for Conscious Consumption.
Thank you, John. I'll be talking about the demand side, starting to tell you about the growth in population in the last about 50 years was 2.2 times. The growth in consumption in that same period was 6.2 times. So the growth in consumption per capita was about 3 times in less than 50 years, in 46 years actually. And that happened when only 16% of the world population consumes 78% of the resources. So if we take that same proportion in carbon emissions, we could say that in this 16% group, each person emits 34 tons per year. Lord Stern, for 2020 recommendation, is 2.6 tons per year, which means to say that in that specific group, we would have to have a reduction of 13 times in terms of the emission. The 16% of the consumers, they are the largest part of the problems. They must be the essential part of the solution, especially because they establish the socially accepted and rejected consumption behaviors, which are being followed by many, many countries. In our work for 10 years in Akatu, one of the things that we found out that is most important in order to be able to change consumer behavior is to change some consumers' perception. I'm not going to be able to talk about all of them, so I'll talk just about one of them. It's important that the consumer perception is changed to perceive that even small consumption attitudes, repeated daily, have a very strong impact on society and the environment. Which means to say the consumer has to perceive that the consumer is individually, even in a small group, powerful to positively transform society. And that, plus the engagement of opinion leaders to support these new consumption behaviors, will lead to a new model of consumption. I'll use as an example, quick example, the campaign we made in Brazil in reduction of food waste. In Brazil, 20 to 40% of the food which is bought into a house is thrown away. For one family, 20% of food during the lifetime of a family, 72 years, means an emission of 45 tons of CO2 per 72 years. If we take this and compare to cars emission, this means that only one family will be equivalent to a car 1.4 motor going 5 times around the Earth, just with this 20%. And if we take that to money, which is always an important way of looking at it, and take a family with a $5,000 monthly income, by saving those 20% in food they bought, and putting in a savings account in Brazil at 6% interest rate, for the life of the family, that family, $5,000 a month, will accumulate $1 million in 72 years. Which means to say that they have a strong inducement in order to change behavior. But it is important to show concrete, individual, short-term benefits, or if it is to be long-term, it has to be extremely large, like $1 million. In Akatu, we take those messages to companies that disseminate to suppliers, to consumers, to clients. We take to advertising. I'll be showing one example. We take to the media. Last year we had $60 million in pro bono media talking about this. We take two communities. The largest community we took last year was Walmart, 80,000 employees who changed their level of perception on sustainability. Educational Institute is actually, together with HP in Brazil, we're taken to the public educational system and to social networks. I would like to show you the TV advertising example, Shakri, if it's possible to. This is one piece of advertising which was awarded in 2009 by The Guardian of London as one of the best pieces of advertising with social purposes in the world. Please. No sound. All right. Well, since you don't have sound, you won't have the effect of it. But this is a supermarket-like advertising approach showing only rotten food that people are throwing away in their homes. And we are saying 1/3 of everything you buy is being thrown away by you and your family. And that is being shown in very strong images, if it was possible for you to see, with rotten food, which is exactly what happens in the houses of people in general. The objective of this systemic approach, communication and education, is to create a critical mass of groups engaged in conscious consumption that transform the socially accepted and rejected consumption behavior. The metrics, which is very interesting, from 2003 to 2010, although Brazil grew from 1% a year economic growth to 9% a year this year, 33% of the population remained at the highest level of consciousness in consumption, which means to say to even do things that only have a long-term effect and a collective effect. The suggestion to companies that are like to live in order to help in this educational process is to donate 3% of your total advertising budget for campaigns to educate the consumers into changing their consumption behavior. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, we have Marie-Anne Connens, the ambassador and head of delegation of the European Union to Mexico.
Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me in this event, in this panel. I feel a little bit special in this panel, not only because I'm the only woman, but also that I'm not directly involved in business. I would like to stress in the first place, and referring to what Dennis said this morning, that for us the input in business is crucial. We definitely see the European Union. We do not see business as a problem, but for us definitely business is an opportunity and a very important player in this fight against climate change. We all know that business provides big economic, that this climate change provide big economic opportunities, and this is the European experience, which I would like a little bit to share with you this morning. If I can make a little bit of advertising by saying that I am proud that the European Union is leading the global efforts to mitigate the effects of climate change. 1/5 of Europe's energy consumption already comes from renewable energies. We are also the first region in the world which has adopted far-reaching, legally binding climate and energy targets. Many countries have targets, but we are the only region with binding targets. We have over 3.4 million jobs created in the European Union in 2009 alone, thanks to eco-industry. And these were more jobs created than, for example, in the automobile industry. So we have also consolidated our position on world markets for energy efficient and low carbon technology. So we see the opportunity to build a low carbon society, and we should not miss this chance. And for that to work, we believe that we need to decouple economic growth from consumption of resources.